Mr. Sitkovetsky, you are going now to play Leonard Bernstein's Serenade for Violin and Orchestra. When did you know this piece?
Well, the first time I heard it in concert was in Moscow. San Francisco Symphony came on tour, and on the program they had this work with Seiji Ozawa as a conductor and Stuart Cunnin as the soloist, and that was the first really time I discovered it. And then later on, when I already came to live in the West, in America, I heard it several times on record and also live with Leonard Bernstein, and that was this time New York Philharmonic with their concertmeister Glenn Dichterov. So I've heard it from the man himself.
When did you play it the first time?
I played for the first time about 3 years ago with the Lausanne Chamber Orchestra and Armin Jordan.
Which point of the piece is the most fascinating for you?
It's hard to say, because I think the work is so well written with such thorough knowledge of the string instruments that it's difficult to say which moment is more important than the other. But maybe the climax of the piece for me comes in the fourth movement, Agathon, where there's an incredible build-up in the orchestra, and the strings really sound absolutely marvelous, and then it goes right into the cadenza, which first starts together with the orchestra and then violin all by itself. So that for me is a very, very special moment, though there are very many other quite magical moments in that piece.
You talked about Agathon, the Greek title of the movement. There are other titles who imagine to have a story of the music. Can you talk us something about that?
Yes, I think in this particular work, had Bernstein named it a concerto for violin and orchestra, I don't think it would have been appropriate, because he really had in mind a particular dialogue by Plato, a famous one called the Symposium, where the philosophers, the poets, got together to talk about different aspects of love. Therefore, Serenade, it really serenade for love. And it has 5 movements, though 7 characters appear, 2 in the first and 2 in the last movement. So the first movement starts with the poet Phaedrus. He speaks about Eros, the god of love, and it's a very beautiful, rather slow-moving part of the first movement, which follows by a much more dynamic part of it, and that's Pausanias, the other philosopher. He spoke of the duality of lover and beloved. Then comes a movement by Aristophanes. And of course, he was the famous comediographer. He wrote many satirical plays and everything. But in this, Bernstein, in his introduction to the Serenade, writes that he sees him rather as a bedtime storyteller, in which, the fairy tale atmosphere and mythology of love recalled. Then the third movement is the fastest and the shortest of the movements, and it's no wonder because the physician Eric Samathos was the prototype for that, and since he was a physician, he spoke of the physical aspects of love. The fourth movement, the one I mentioned before, probably the most moving speech of the whole symposium, and that came from Agathon, and he really spoke of all aspects of love's power and functions, and really it's a very, very special work, Adagio. The following fifth movement again has 2 characters. First, Socrates, who recalls his visit to the seer Diotima and her moving story of the demonology of love. So that's a very demonic kind of a part of the Serenade. And then the famous interruption by Alcibiades and his drunken friends interrupted the serious part of the Symposium, and then came the party itself with a lot of swing and jig dance and all kinds of jazz elements as well. Then in the coda, most of the themes and the elements of the entire piece recalled in a faster movement in a different way, but it's really, and then a very brief, very effective coda finishes it off.
So we are talking about a piece for violin and orchestra. Are there any technical aspects of playing the violin which are different from the normal way to play?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I think it's a very special piece of music, also not only by its form, but by its substance. The violin here is first among equals. And I don't think it was an accident that Leonard Bernstein only used the string section of the orchestra and percussions and the harp. So you've got the string instruments and the percussion group. And I think that, therefore, the blend of the instruments is especially good, and one has to be always in touch with everything that's going on in the orchestra. From the technical point of view, it's extremely well written, using all kinds of double stops, harmonics, and spiccato, ricochet, all kinds of things, all the arsenal of the violinistic pyrotechnics. But it always serves to the purpose, to the musical purpose, and to the idea behind it.
Is it difficult to play?
It's difficult, but it's challenging, I would say. It's very rewarding for the people involved, not only, I hope, for me, but also for the members of the orchestra, because we feel sort of like one family.
Do you think this piece is a very typical representative of Bernstein's kind of musical thinking?
Yeah, I think it's rather vintage Bernstein, if I may say so, because I think it was a very prolific time of his, life as a composer. It was written in '54. Strangely enough, this work was finished literally weeks before I was born, so I have sort of the same age with the work itself. But aside from that, it really was a very interesting time of his life. He wrote wonderful classical compositions, but also music for films on the waterfront. And 3 years later came, of course, the great masterpiece, The West Side Story. So I think the elements of the really all that we know and love about Bernstein and Bernstein's music, it's all there. And I think it's consistently on such high level. The way he uses the counterpoint and the composition technique, I think, is remarkable.
So wish you good luck for your concert.
Thank you. Thank you very much.